Welcome to the legendary Leadership Summit 2019 with Cody, Dakota, Wooten.
And so I've been truly honored to be learning from so many absolutely amazing individuals. And I am looking forward to showing you guys something that I've been working on for a long period of time that I believe has a ton of value to be giving to you guys. And with this, a lot of people would look at this system and think about it from the personal perspective. And what's great about it is that it can be taken from the personal perspective. However, we can also utilize it to develop a dream team and to create an organization that thrives at the highest levels. And so, without further ado, we're going to be talking about the life and death of your team, what you need to understand to guide your team to life and away from death. And both life and death are acronyms. And we're going to dive into what is life, what is death, why should you be avoiding death, and why you need to be going towards life, both as an individual and looking at it from the team perspective to create that dream team. And so let's hit that slide for me. We're basically looking at life. And within life, you have two paths that you can go down. And the thing is, you can choose which path you want to go down. One side is the path of life, and the other is the path of death. Now, along with this, if you don't make a decision right now, your path will be chosen for you. And the sad state of affairs in the world is that the path that most people are on are death. And most people, when they don't make a decision, get pulled towards death, even if that's not necessarily what they want. And so right now you have to make the choice. Do you want life or do you want death? And I'm not talking about life and death just as a being alive and being dead, although that is a part of it. We're also talking about the life and death of your dreams, the life and death of your team, the life and death of your business or organization. Do you want a business and organization that's alive? Do you want a team that's alive? Or do you want them to be dead? Now, within this, there's a huge battle that leaders are facing today. And these are some of the statistics that are behind that battle. The first one here from the National Institute of Mental Health. It's 7.1% of people are impacted by depression. They are living in clinical depression. And that is just what's diagnosed. There are people who are living with depression that don't have it diagnosed. They won't go to a doctor to get it diagnosed, and they're just battling it day to day to day. On top of this, with our next statistic, what we've got comes from the American Psychological Association, which is 18% of people are impacted by anxiety. And this anxiety isn't just the run-of-the-mill anxiety. This is the hardest types of anxiety because, again, this is clinical anxiety we're talking about. Outside of this 18%, a huge amount of the population is facing other levels of anxiety. Hit me with the next statistic. Next one, 12% of the people, 12% of the world is people angry at what's going on in the world. This is like a full out anger we're talking about. You bring up anything with the world condition today, and they will literally be just full on angry by it. And it's not just this 12% within this statistic. On our next statistic, 56% of people are frustrated at the world conditions. So full out angry and frustration, both of these, which are extremely detrimental. So, and with that alone, you're talking about 68% of people right there, just with those two pieces. This other statistic here, which is one of my favorite ones to quote of all time, and it comes from the Harvard Business Review. 58% of people trust a complete stranger more than their boss. What that means is that within that, people would trust someone who may be an axe murderer more than their boss, who they spend 40 plus hours a week with. That is terrifying. Terrifying to think that you spend more time with someone that you trust less than someone who could be an axe murderer. But that is the battle that leaders have to face. This is what people are looking like in the world today. What all of this means is that 50% of leaders are facing something within this right now. 50% of leaders, at least, are facing one of these things going on. On top of that, if you don't happen to be facing depression, you're not living anxiously, you're not angry and frustrated, and you're not trusting a complete stranger more than your boss, the likelihood is that someone very close to you is facing these things, and it's impacting you, directly impacting you. What that means is that basically every single leader is fighting all of these things. And this is going to lead us into death. Death is an acronym that I use, and death literally is death. There's 3 phases to death, and each phase leads into the next phase, with phase 3 being literal death. It is the true death, whether it's the death of that team that you have, it's the death of the organization, or it's your literal death. These things that we're going to be talking about scientifically are being proven to kill people, literally, which means that this is things that at least 50% of people are facing personally that are literally killing them. And the other 50% of people who it's not literally impacting right away, they're being directly impacted by someone very close to them. With that, let's go into what D is. The first part of death, you start with discontent. You see the world and you're just not satisfied with it. So often that happens, especially within leadership. You look at your team and you're not satisfied with the results you're getting. You look at your business and you're not satisfied with where we've gotten to and where we would like to be instead. You look at people who, with their families, they're discontent with how it's gotten. The rates of divorce are skyrocketing in the world right now. It's terrible. It's sad. It's also the truth of what's happening. And from discontent, eventually the discontent becomes depression. And depression is something so many people are facing right now. It is an epidemic of depression we're facing right now. And that depression causes death in so many different ways. One of the most easy ways we see is it just creates a decrease in productivity. When people are depressed, they don't want to work at the highest levels. When people are depressed, they feel like they can't work at the highest levels. And when people aren't working at the highest levels and they feel like they can't work at the highest levels, productivities decrease dramatically from what is potentially possible. And so if you're an organization, you need to look at depression, you need to look at discontent and understand that this isn't something that a person has to face on their own. The fact that they are facing it is impacting you directly. Let's move on from here to the E. E starts with empty. So many people in today's world talk about feeling empty. They go to work, they feel empty. They feel like they don't actually contribute anything at work. They go home, things are going wrong at home, and they don't feel like they get anything from the relationships they have. They feel like their significant others too distant. They feel like their kids don't want to have anything to do with them. They keep falling into these situations of feeling empty. And eventually what empty leads to is envious. You see all the things you don't want, or you don't have, rather. You see all the things you don't have, and you look out in the world and you see other people who have those things that you don't have. And you go from empty, knowing that you don't have it, to seeing all the people that do have it. And you say, why do they have it and I don't? And you typically end up with comparisons. They are not as smart as I am. I should have it because I'm smarter than them. Or I'm nicer than that person. How come they have it and I don't? And that envy can drive you crazy. It shows you more and more the things you don't have, the things you wish you had. And it shows you how much more there is in the world that you can't seem to obtain yourself. And you have the double negative here, where sometimes that envy leads to discontent and depression. So now you have two different things that are feeding off of each other. And it creates a circle, this whirlpool feature. And the more of these that you are finding in your life, the further it drags you down. Next, we've got our A's. And A starts with apprehensive. A lot of people in the world today are terrified of moving forward with something. Most people don't know how to face challenges. They see the challenge and it terrifies them. And what happens is that apprehensiveness leads to anxiety. They see the challenge ahead of them and it makes them so nervous that they get caught up into it. The problem with this is that anything that people want in life, anything that people are looking for in life, they need to go past the challenge. If they don't go through the challenge, they can't obtain the things they have or want. If you can't attain the things you want, it's going to fuel you even further. It creates this circle, another circle here. You go feeling anxious, so you don't take the action you need to take, which makes you feel like you can't take actions. When the next thing comes again, you create a self-fulfilling prophecy where you need to take the action to move forward. You become too anxious because you're afraid of moving forward. And again and again and again, this keeps happening. Let's move into T. And T is timid. So many people are so timid in today's world. And with this, you can't be timid. You need to have courage in today's world. You need to go meet people. So this is a crazy thing that's happening in today's world. We have a whole generation of people coming up where they don't know how to have a conversation at all. They don't know how to have that conversation. They know that communication is important. They text people, they're on Messenger, but that's not real communication. And once they get face to face with someone, they're timid. They don't know how to have a conversation. They turn away. And what happens? You can't create friendships when that happens. You can't create relationships with a significant other without that. You have a hard time creating relationships with your employees because you're too timid to create that relationship. And as this happens, it creates turmoil within you. And that turmoil continues to eat at you. because you want to have the courage to talk to people. You want to have the courage to take the step forwards that you need. And every single time you don't do it, there's a gap that happens. There's the potential self that you know exists in the world. You can see it. It's clear as day. It's there. And yet, this is where you are. And every single time you're too timid to move forward, it's a step further away from that, and a step further away from that, and a step further away from that. And the turmoil builds up more and more and more because you see that. You see what could be possible for you. You see the life that you want to have. You see having the best friendships in the world. You see having a great relationship with a significant other. You see a family that enjoys being around each other, that does stuff together. You see a business that's thriving. You see team members who aren't just there to get work done, who are there because they want to be there. And yet it seems to get further and further and further away from you. And that turmoil tears you apart from the inside. And then we go into H. H goes from hopeless. Within today's world, there's so much negativity being spread from one end of the world to the other end of the world that people feel like there's no hope. They're looking for these smallest shreds of hope, and they continually find that it's not there. They look to the news, and the news only shows them all the negative things that are happening, and it feeds further into that hopelessness. They look to religion, and they find that within religion, there are people who aren't giving them the answers that they're hoping to find. And they find people in religious places of power that should be doing good work that are doing really terrible work. They look to their family, but it feels like everything keeps getting worse. The kids seem to want less and less to do with you. The significant other seems to want less and less to do with you. There's no hope when you come home. They look to politics, hoping that a political leader will rise up and change the world. I mean, the slogans of the last two presidents have been something trying to inspire hope. And yet, people aren't finding it. Levels of discontent with the presidents, regardless of if it was Republican or Democrat, have been at all-time highs. They're not finding hope in the presidential leaders either. And they're not finding hope in the other political candidates that are out there. And what happens when you can't find hope, over time it turns into being hateful. Without hope, you can't find anything to enjoy in life. And without any joy, you find more things to hate. I hate the political system because it keeps continuing to do things wrong. I hate that they don't listen to the people within the political atmosphere. I hate that when I come home, my wife doesn't listen to me. I hate that my kids don't respect me. I hate that when I go into work, my manager, my boss, they don't know me. They don't care about me. I hate going to work because of that. You find more and more things to be hateful of because none of it gives you hope that there can be good within the world. It's sad. And this is the state of things. This is the reality of the world we're facing. 50% of people are living in the second phase of death. Not the first phase, the second phase of death. So many people are depressed. They are at extreme levels of enviousness. They are extremely anxious. They're living in tons of turmoil, and they're feeling extremely hateful. And if you happen not to be in the second phase of death right now, you know someone who's extremely close to you who is living in that second phase of death. And that is creating the first phase of death for you. When people are depressed all the time around you, the people around them are discontent being around them. I think we've all been in that spot where someone is always depressed and it's hard to be around them. It's not that you don't want to care about them. It's that every single time they're always depressed and you get discontent being around them. And sometimes you continue to stay around them anyways, and it creates depression in your life. And all of these, same thing happens. When you see someone in your family going through turmoil in their life, it's hard to see them do that. It can leave you feeling hopeless at times. It can leave you feeling discontent. It can leave you feeling empty. And so many of these phases intertwine with each other. One can cause another one, which creates the whirlpool even stronger. And so then you start going from one of these to two of these to three of these until you're experiencing all of these. And when you're experiencing all of these, it literally kills you. Literally kills you. Depression literally kills people. It almost killed my grandfather. My grandfather was diagnosed with cancer, and they said, you only have a couple months to live. And during the first couple months of his cancer, he aged tremendously. It was crazy how fast he aged. He was in his 60s, but he looked like he was in his 90s. He acted like he was in his 90s. He was literally dying right in front of us. And my aunt had the courage to stand up and say, no, you're not dead yet. Get up. Start doing something with your life until you are dead. And don't give up until you are dead. I'm happy that he heard her. Sadly, some people don't hear that message. He did hear her. And you know what happened? He got better. He looks younger now than he did then. And he's still alive. He's beaten the cancer. And it's been years since he was diagnosed with cancer. Close to a decade now, when he was told that he was only going to have months to live. And he looked like he was about to die. That the feelings of depression in him, the feelings of turmoil in him, the feelings of anxiety within him were literally killing him. Literally killing him. And he was able to overcome it. Sadly, that's not true of everybody who's going through these right now. So many people are literally dying from each of these. They're dying from the depression. They're dying from the envy. They're dying from the anxiety and the turmoil and the feelings of hate in life. And the question becomes, when so many people are feeling death all around them, when they're feeling all these different things, how do you move past it? How do you get out of death? And the key to that is to switch your focus. See, the world is so focused on death. And what you focus on, you find more of. And so many people are focused on the depression. They're focused on the envy. They're focused on the anxiety. They're focused on the turmoil and the hatefulness. And you see it everywhere around you. You go to the news, you see it. You go to social media, you see it. You watch TV shows and you see these things. And it adds more and more to death. And so the key to overcome death is to switch your focus. Instead of focusing on everything that causes death, we need to focus on what causes life. And that's what we're going to talk about next. What is life? Tony, hit that key for me. Thank you. So life, this is what we need to begin to focus on. Because when you focus on life, you have the ability to overcome death, these things let you see past all the things that cause death so that you can move forward with your life, so that you can attain something higher. And that's what we all want. As human beings, we are seeking life. So, with life, the first part of life, oh, one more thing to add. What's really cool about this, in Japanese culture, there's a concept called ikigai. And basically what this is a person's purpose, their reason for being. That's the equivalent translation, their reason for being. In each part of life has a corresponding part to ikigai. And if you look at it from this perspective, you can have a better understanding both of ikigai and life. That's why I've put them together. So let's look at the L. The first one is legacy. And legacy ties to the ikigai concept of what you can be paid for. Now, you might think that's kind of an odd thing when you first think about it. What you can be paid for, legacy, how does that exactly add up? Well, what you are paid for is what you end up passing on. And what you can be paid for isn't always necessarily money. Money is definitely an important piece to having success in life in general and being able to live, because let's face it, there are bills to pay. You need to pay for rent, for your house bill, for food. You need to be making money, but that's not the only thing that you can be paid for. You can be paid for with time. You can be paid for with love, communication. There's so much you can be paid for. Praise you can be paid for. And this all has to do with your legacy. Let's jump to I. I is your impact. And it's what the world needs in the Ikigai concept. What does the world need? When you know what the world needs and you know that you have the ability to impact that, that's something that can bring life into you. You know you're doing something that matters in the world. And so many people aren't focusing on that. They're focusing on why their contributions don't matter. But for you, it doesn't have to be like that. You can focus on, how am I impacting the world? How can I impact the world at a higher level? Let's go into F. Flow. Flow is what you love. Now, flow is a concept that's a psychological concept. And I can't think of the guy's name. Check me high. It's close to his last name. Created the concept of flow. And basically what flow is this time within the mind that allows you to feel at your absolute highest self. When you're in flow, time seems to disappear. You don't have a concept of time. Within flow, everything seems to just connect a lot easier for you. When you're in flow, challenges stop being challenges. When you're in flow, you stop questioning yourself. You see what it needs to get done, and you don't ask questions about it. You just do it like that. And flow, some people consider to be the most important thing in life. That with flow, they believe that that is actually the source of life, what everyone is seeking. And I think personally, it's an important part to the piece, but it's not the only thing that's important. And let's dive into E. E is empowerment. And you have to ask, what are you good at? What you are good at, you feel empowered by. And it's so important to feel like you're empowered in your life. So many people feel disempowered. They feel like nothing they do is good. They feel like nothing is ever good enough. And when you focus on what it is that you actually are good at, and you start living in that more often, you begin to feel the empowerment all around you. And what you're looking for in your life is a combination of all of these. When you can find all of these, you've found your reason to be. You're finding life. And it's so important. In my own life, these are the things that help me overcome my biggest challenges. My worst times, it was these things that helped me overcome them. Let me just give you an example. There was a point in my life where I was engaged, and I had believed that this was going to be the person I was going to marry. I had believed this was the person that I was going to spend the entirety of my life with. And I thought everything was going to be great. I had her and I had a best friend. And I thought he was going to be my best friend forever. These were the two main people that were a part of my support system. What happened was that she left me. She didn't tell me why. She didn't give me any reasons. She just said that she needed to. She left me. 2 weeks later, I find out she started to date the person that I thought was my best friend. And I'd been going to him, trying to go to him during this time, needing support because I didn't know what was going on. I was lost. I was confused. I was in pain. I was depressed. And I was trying to get him to help me. And behind my back, he started a relationship with the person I thought I was going to marry. And so I discovered very quickly that the two people I thought were going to be a part of my life forever didn't really see me as a part of their life. It left me broken. It left me in despair. I was so depressed during that time. I was anxious all the time. I didn't feel empowered. I didn't feel any of it. I didn't feel much at all except pain. And I remember so many times, we lived on the third floor, and I would go up to my room and I would look out the window. And I remember looking out the window and seeing below concrete pavement below. And I thought so many times, if I just went out this window head first, everything would end. I wouldn't have to worry about it anymore. I wouldn't have to feel depressed. I wouldn't have to feel anxious. I wouldn't have to feel anything. It would all be over. And I lived with that for a while, just looking out the window, knowing it could end like that. But it didn't end right there. It did not end right there. Why didn't it end right there? For some people, that would have been it. Some people would have went out the window right then. And it saddens me to think how many people have gone out the window. Some literally, some metaphorically. And all the potential they had in their life gone like that. Because the death that they were experiencing in their life was too powerful for them. What I did during that time was instead I focused on life. Instead of focusing on the depression, instead of focusing on the anxiety, I thought about legacy. What was the legacy I wanted to leave behind for people? I knew I wanted to get married and have kids. I knew that I could accomplish great things in the world. I knew this deep down in me. I knew it had to be there. And I thought about if I went into the future, or if I killed myself right now, what would people say about me? What would people think about me? Wow, Such a tragedy. That guy, he had so much potential, and it just disappeared. And I didn't want that to be my legacy. If I didn't kill myself and I still stayed in that state and I happened to have kids later on, I didn't want my kids to look up to me and say, wow, Dad, the way you had life before, you look like you had so much going for you and you didn't really do anything with your life. I didn't want them to say that about me. I wanted future generations to look at me and say, wow, he had potential and he lived up to it. He had the ability and he went for it. Was he scared? Was he terrified? Heck yeah, he was. Was he depressed at times? Yeah, because the world isn't easy and it's hard sometimes. I wanted them to look up to me and say, wow, he did it. He got there. He overcame the odds. He continued forward even when he didn't want to. And because he did it, I can do it too. That's what I wanted them to say. That's what I wanted them to look at me like. That's what I wanted them to see. That legacy helped pull me out. I asked, what was the impact I wanted in the world? How could I impact the world? At the time, I wasn't exactly sure. During the whole midst of this, I wasn't sure what I was going to do. And I went into accounting because at the time I discovered I was good at doing the work of accounting. What I discovered in the long run was that accounting wasn't actually where I could make the biggest impact, because the work of it I could do well, definitely, but it didn't inspire me. It wasn't something that allowed me to impact at the highest level I knew was possible. And so by chance, really more than anything, I discovered that when I spoke, people liked to listen to what I had to say. When I spoke, people heard things that they needed to hear. And it's not because I think I'm some sort of great speaker. It's just what happened. I spoke what was on my heart. I spoke what I thought they needed to hear at that time. And it impacted people. And by chance, I discovered this happened. I discovered what was coaching. When I went through school, I had never heard of what business coaching was. This was a weird concept to me, that people got coached in businesses. I knew sports. It made perfect sense. I'd been doing sports for years and years and years. I knew what coaches were there. What was a business coach? And as soon as I started to hear what it was, it's about people listening. It's about people understanding. It's about people helping guide the business owner to a new level of success. It's about seeing the business owner as they are and understanding the challenges they're facing and helping them overcome those challenges. This was something that people sought from me from the time from all I could remember, to be completely honest. I've had person after person after person come to me when they were going through their toughest times and say, Cody, I need your help. Talk to me because I know you can help me through this. And I said, if I could get paid to do this, I'll get paid to do this. Why not? And I started to discover these are ways I can impact people. And I have been impacting people. And I started to focus more on that and going more towards that. Within Flow, I had been doing sports for years and years and years. Since I can remember, I've been doing sports. One sport to another sport to another sport. Most sports I've played at some capacity in my life. I've been doing martial arts for 20 years now, many of which I've been instructing in martial arts. I've been playing lacrosse for many years now, and I played NCAA Division III lacrosse. And it was during this time where I was feeling at my worst that I sought out these things, because it allowed me to get into that flow state. It allowed me to feel the timelessness. It allowed me to get out of the self-doubt. I dove into the martial arts. I dove into the lacrosse. And those helped me out so much to be able to just get my mind out of all of the challenges, to get my mind into just the present of the things going on right then. And everyone finds flow in different ways. Some people find flow through sports like I do. Some people find it through having great conversations. You have that conversation with that friend and like it goes on for hours and hours and hours. And then all of a sudden you look at the time and you're like, I thought 15 minutes passed. It's been 5 hours. How did that happen? That's flow. And so you need to ask yourself, how do you find flow? Some people find it through driving. They just get in the car and they start going. And they just go with how the streets are going. And then they decide that it's time to come home and they get home and it's hours later. What flow is for you, that's up to you to determine. For me, at that time, it was martial arts and lacrosse. And I dove into them and they helped pull me out. Let me get a sip here. Last one, empowerment. I had to find what are the different things that I'm good at. Before that period of time, there were a lot of things that I sacrificed in my life and that I was sadly willing to sacrifice because I was moving towards a future that I thought was going to be there. I sacrificed many of my dreams because I felt that if I was going to continue with this relationship, this dream just wouldn't be a possibility. So I sacrificed the dream. I sacrificed time with friends because I saw that there were things in the relationship that needed to be tended to. And I felt like I had to put myself fully into the relationship. And so I discarded a lot of friends during that time. And all these other things I lost during that time. And so I came out of that relationship and I had to ask myself, what are the things I'm actually good at? Who is Cody? Who can I be around that'll help me feel empowered? I made new friends during that time who really helped pull me out. I felt empowered when I was with them. I had to ask myself, what are my dreams? What are the places I want to get to? What does that actually look like? I had to ask myself, what skills do I have? What skills are worth having in the world and utilizing in the world? I had to ask, what can I be doing today that's going to make me feel empowered? That makes me feel like I have some sort of sense of control in my life. And I started doing those things. And sometimes it was small. It wasn't like I've changed the world overnight. I'm not that great. I wish I was. You know how many people wish they were that great? I'm not that great. I accept that. But even if it was just a tiny thing that day, and I said, I'm going to get that done. And I got it done. And I said, I've taken control of my life just a little bit that day. I did it again the next day. I did it again the next day, and 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 kept doing it. And guess what? Over time, those things got bigger. They continue to get bigger for me. And it's amazing to see how big they're starting to get. I'm so excited about what is lying in the future. But it started day by day by day with the little things that allowed me to feel empowered in my life so that I could take my life in my hands and move forward. Now, within all of this, we're looking at developing a dream team. And so, with this concept of life, we have to go from me to we. So, how do we look at life, not just for yourself, but for your team, for your business, for your organization? How do we make that mental flip? Because anybody can do it for themselves. I did it for myself. You can do it too. Anybody can do it for themselves. But the legendary leaders figure out how to create life not just for themselves, but for every member of their team. And they figure out how to create life for their business and for their organization. And so, as a leader, you have to ask these questions. If you look at legacy, you have to say, what do I want the legacy of my business and organization to be? What do I want it to look like 100 years from now? What do I want it to look like 50 years from now? 10 years from now? A year from now? What do I want that business to be? What do I want people to be saying about it? Do I want people to say, I don't know if I would use their services, they've got some problems? Or do I want them to say, that business, I wouldn't trust any other business except that business? You have to ask yourself, what do you want that to be? Do you want that business to be a 6-figure business? Do you want it to be a 7-figure business? Do you want it to be $1 billion business? What legacy do you want for that business? Where do you want it to be going toward? How can that business impact the world? What is it that you guys do that the world needs? That when they think of that, they don't think of anyone else except your business. People in the personal development world, a lot of times when they think of someone that'll get their energy really going and high up, they're going to think of Tony Robbins immediately without question. When people think of computers and phones, more often than not, they're going to think of Apple. When they think of doing an internet search, they're going to think of Google. What is that impact that your business can create, that your organization can create, that the world needs? That's inspirational. That's what people follow brands for. Flow. How do you create flow in your organization? How do you create more opportunities for flow to exist? What is detracting from flow? And how do you get rid of it so that more people can be in flow? This is a big question that businesses are asking right now. And they're paying literally billions of dollars to answer this question, is how do we create more flow in our business? Google is paying billions of dollars to understand how do we get each of our employees in flow more often throughout the day. And this is another crazy statistic. What they've found with flow in most organizations is that people are in flow less than 20% of the time in their work, which means that the flow is when you're getting in your highest levels of productivity. And that means that 80% of the time you're sitting at a computer, or your team is sitting at the computer. They're nowhere near what their potential is. And they're nowhere near as productive as they could be. And there's billions upon billions of dollars being lost there. And as a leader, if you can understand what flow is, if you can understand how to get your team in flow more often, you're unlocking a key that's extremely important right now, which people are asking and are dying to know the answer to. They want to know that. And it's possible. Leaders, you listening right now, can create that flow within your team. It's possible, it's there. But the question is, how are you going to do it? But it can be done. And then empowerment. How does our business make sure that more people within it are feeling empowered? That's a big question that's going on today. And that's something we've talked about a lot during this summit. How do we make them feel empowered? How do we give them the power to be able to function on their own? And how do we make sure not to take it away? And that's so important to ask as a leader, because you as the leader cannot do it all on your own. You need everyone in the business and organization to be at a level of empowerment that they can act on their own, that you don't have to watch them every second of the day, that they have the ability to make mistakes, learn from the mistakes, and correct the mistakes without you needing to assist them. You need to get to that level of empowerment if you're looking to become a legendary leader. And that's at the organizational level that we've been talking about. But this applies just as well to the team level. Every single person on your team has a legacy they want to create. Some of them are going to be grandiose, big legacies they want to create. And you have to ask, how can I help them create that legacy within our team? Some of them want a really small legacy. They just want to come home at the end of the day and be happy with their wife and kids. Nothing wrong with that. That's powerful by itself, because a good family can create a legendary leader in the future that will change the entire world. That is just as important as the person changing the world right now. Some people, the legacy they want to leave is that they just do good work. They come in during the day, they do it well, people appreciate that about them, and they get to go home at the end of the day and feel like they actually accomplished something at work. That's powerful. More people need to feel like that when they go to work. And the truth is, most people don't feel like that at all when they go to work. And just accomplishing that little thing would make so many people feel more alive. And if you can figure out how to do that on your team, so much power right there. On your team, you have to ask about impact. How can this individual impact at a higher level than they currently are? See, most of the time when leaders are looking at their team, they see that person on their team and they see the job they have, and they say, are they getting the check marks for that job for the day? Did this person reach out to this many people? Did they solve this many accounts? They're just doing check marks. And the check marks have nothing to do with how that person can impact the business. Nothing to do with it. And what happens is, most of the time, those people are hired into those positions. They aren't doing work that they know they can be impactful of, and they feel hopeless at the end of the day. They feel like they're just doing a job that doesn't really matter. And it adds up into the other phases of death. But as a leader, if you can look at that person and you can say, I think you can do more. I think there's more to you than what you're doing right now. And I want to know, how do you see yourself impacting people? how many leaders are doing that right now? If we're looking at the statistics, rarely does that actually happen. But think about the employee. They want to be asked that question. They want people to know what they're good at. They want you as the leader to know what they're good at. And they want you as the leader to give them permission to do it. But you can't give them permission if you don't know what it is. And so you have to discover, what is that impact? And guess what? That impact may not have anything to do with the job that they're doing right now. And that's okay. In fact, I would say that's great for you if you discover that. Because if you keep that person in that position and they aren't impacting, you're causing death in them. And they in turn are causing death in the business and organization and team. And so if you discover that their ability to impact doesn't lie in the position that you have them in currently, that's great. Now you can figure out where can they impact instead. And you can fill in their position with someone who can impact at a higher level than they ever could. And that's a great thing for your business and organization. That turns your business from being a regular run-of-the-mill business to one that creates legendary results, that creates reproducible, monumental results. But you have to know, how does each individual impact at the highest levels? You have to ask that question. You have to look at each individual and you have to understand, how do they enter those states of flow? For some people, they enter flow by looking into a computer and getting down into the work really fast. You see this a lot in IT world. That's where they find their flow. And so if you want to create more of that, you need to get them in front of the computer more often, and you need to get rid of the distractions that are going to pull them out of flow. And there's a lot of science that goes behind this as well that shows that the ability to go into flow is very hard to do. And the ability to go into flow multiple times gets exponentially harder each time you try and get back into flow. It's kind of like a rocket. In order to get the rocket into space, I want to say somewhere between 80 and 90% of the fuel that is in the rocket is required to get it out into space. And the other 10 to 20% allows them to do everything they want to do in space and get back home. 80 to 90% of it is expounded at the onset, and flow works the same way. It's more difficult to do at the beginning, and once you get into it, it's easier to stay in it. But then as soon as you fall out of flow, you have to again take all that energy to get back into it. And what the science shows is that you only have a certain amount of energy per day. And there are other things that show that you can get some energy back, but it's short spurts. It's not that you do those things and you get all of your energy back. It's that you come down and you can get a little bit back, and you go down and you can get a little bit back, and it keeps going like this. And then you need a full day's rest before you get that full amount of energy. And so every single time someone gets pulled out of flow, it's that much more difficult for them to get back into flow. And so if your person's flow point is getting into the computer work, you got to figure out, how do I get them in front of the computer faster? How do I make sure that no one distracts them so that they can stay in that flow more often, so that the energy they expended to get into flow is worthwhile? Some people get into flow with having conversations. They make great salespeople. Why? Because they can get in front of a person, shake hands, and be able to talk with them and get them to buy whatever the thing is. Great. If that's how you get in the flow, how do I get them in the flow more often? How do I make sure they get into to make the sale more often? How do I make sure they get in front of more people more often? And one thing that you see with a lot of sales organizations is that the person that's really good with people is really bad at sending out emails because there's no human interaction with the emails. And so if you want to figure out how do you get that person in flow more often, take the emails away from them. Have someone else who's really good at emails, someone who's really good at reaching out to people by emails and creating schedules and setting up times to meet, do that. Have them focus on that. And then they pass off the baton to the person who's exceptional at getting the sale done, who's exceptional at the face-to-face meeting, who gets in the flow during the face-to-face meeting. When you create that, you're creating multiple team members who are all in high states of flow more often. And that's powerful right there. As a team, you want your members to be in flow as often as possible. And then you go into empowerment. This is a tricky one for leaders because so often people look at empowerment and they say, this person is good at doing this, therefore they must feel empowered when they do it. And I can tell you that's not always true because I'm pretty great at math. I'm not like the best. I'm not a rocket scientist by any means, but when it comes to business accounting, I can do the math really well. However, doing it, I don't feel empowered at all. I feel miserable doing it. I'm good at it, but I don't like doing it. And so you need to understand there's a difference between being good at it and feeling empowered by it. And you have to figure out on your team what makes each individual feel empowered and what makes them feel disempowered. Another way this plays out a lot in leadership is some people hate being micromanaged. So if you're looking over their shoulder every 10 minutes, they're going to feel extremely unempowered and they're going to resent you for it. They're going to feel hopeless in situations. They're going to feel anxious. Like any second now, they're going to pop up over my shoulder and ask me what I'm doing. Ah! And it's going to lead to the death of the team over the long run. However, there are other people that want you to ask all the time what they're doing, how they're doing. And they want to tell you exactly what they're doing. They want to tell you exactly how well they're doing it. They love that. They love telling you all the great things they're doing. They love you knowing exactly all the things they're doing for you. They want you to know. But if you just leave them out on their own, you never give them feedback, they're going to feel disempowered. They're going to feel lost. If they tell you what they're doing and you're like, okay, that's great, and you walk away, they're going to feel like you don't appreciate all the things that they're doing. And that's a completely different mindset that you're working with. And so you have to ask for each individual, how do they feel empowered? And how can I help them find more situations where they do feel empowered? That is what life is about on the different perspectives. And what's great is when you do this on your team, when you do this in your business and organization, you can impact life not just at work, but you can help them find more life outside of work. And this is where things get really fun as a leader. And this is where a lot of people have the highest levels of life in their businesses and organizations. Because it's not just about the 40 hours they spend at work. What you see a lot within the world of death is wherever they're feeling death in one area of life, it's impacting the other area of life. And they feed off of each other and they continue to make things worse. And so they go to work. They feel like their boss doesn't care. They feel like the work they do doesn't matter. They feel angry because they got yelled at for something very minor, but they only ever get yelled at. And so it just adds to their anxiety and it adds to their hatefulness. And they come home and they want to vent. And when they vent, who do they vent to? They will vent to their significant other. They vent to their kids. And does the significant other and do the kids want that? Do they want that negativity feeding out into them? No, they don't want that. No one wants death put on them. No one wants that. But it happens so often. On top of that, so many people had that argument with their significant other the other day, or their kid did something terrible and it really irritated you. Maybe they crashed the car the night before and now you have to figure out, okay, how do I pay for someone else's car because my kid rear-ended somebody else? And that death is feeding into you, and you bring that to work with you. Someone has a question. It's a very innocent question. Maybe they're new and they just don't know yet, and they're hoping you can help them. And you just go off on them. You're like, you're stupid, and this, you should know how to do this. That happens so often in work. And what that person is angry about has nothing to do with the other person, but it feeds into it. And it creates more death around them and more death in other people's lives. And you as the leader, what you can start doing when you're creating life at work, when you're creating life in the business and it's succeeding well, when you're creating life in each of the individuals on your team, they're going to take life with them back home. They're going to take life with them into other activities. And they'll cause death to less people. On top of this, what you have the opportunity to do as a leader, which takes you from being a leader to a legendary leader, is that sometimes they're going to bring the death with them to work. And instead of feeling like they're a terrible person, they're stupid, they're, they've completely changed their world and we don't need them anymore, so we're going to fire them. Instead of doing that, you can look at this person and you can say, I know you. I know you as a person. I know the legacy you want to create. I know the impact you want to create. I know how you feel empowered. And I know you want to do well in this team. And you're not doing that right now. There is something going on, and I don't know what it is. But I want to know what it is. Because I know the legacy you want to create. Because I know the impact you want to have. Because I know those things, I want to be able to help you get there. And there is something that is preventing you from getting there right now. So let's talk. Let's have a conversation. What is it that's going on that's causing death right now in your life? And how can we turn it around? And they can be human. They can open up to you and say, you know what? Last night, I just had a fight with my significant other. And it sucked. It was terrible. This is what we fought about. We fought about money. We fought about whatever, right? Money is the number one cause of most divorces. And if you as the leader can see that, and you see that your person on your team, who you know the legacy they want to create, you know the impact they want to have, you see that money is the cause of the death they're experiencing in their life, you can have a conversation with them. Maybe you have the opportunity as a leader to promote them or to give them a raise. Maybe you don't have that opportunity. And you say, well, if money is a problem, how can we get you somewhere else? Maybe you can help them figure out how to get some sort of part-time gig. Maybe they have a skill that you know is really good, and you know someone else who could utilize that skill. And you say, hey, my friend over here is actually looking for skills that you have. I'm sure that if you wanted, I could help them by offering you to do consulting work for them. You'll make money so you can stop having this fight at home. They get the work they need to get done. And when you come to work, I know you're going to be a happier person. And I know you're going to be able to do your job better because you're not having that fight anymore. Do you know how powerful that is to an individual to know that their leader has their back to that level? People will literally do anything for you as a leader if they know you have their back at that level. And that is where the amazing things start to happen. That is where legendary leaders are created. It's in those moments like that. Legendary leaders aren't just remembered for the businesses they create or the teams they were a part of. They're remembered for how they made everyone feel during those times. They're remembered because they brought life into those people. They're remembered because the people on their team that were a part of their dream team remember that leader as one of their best friends. Not just because they were friendly, but because they legitimately completely changed their life. And they know that if that leader hadn't been a part of their life, they wouldn't be where they are today. That it would not have been possible without that leader. And that is the power that we're talking about, that you have as a leader. That is the power that exists within you. That's the power you have over your organization and in your team. That's the power. And so you have to actually go through all of this. And you have to start looking to understand, where is death right now? Where do people feel discontent and depressed? Where are they feeling anxious and hopeless? Where in their life are they experiencing this? Where in our organization are people feeling like this the most? Maybe you have one team that always feels hopeless. That's an opportunity for you to go into that and say, how can I bring life into that team? Because if that team starts performing at a higher level, it'll create more success for all of the teams. And so now I know, as the leader, I need to go into this team. And I need to figure out, how do we create more life in that team? And you can lead the entire organization to new levels of life. But you have to do the hard work of asking and being honest with yourself. Where is this death happening? And what you'll find a lot of times is that the fault is actually in yourself, that you are the cause of it. And it's not saying that you're intentionally doing this, because I know that if you're listening right now, you want to be a great leader. If you didn't want to be a great leader, you wouldn't be here listening. However, what we don't know, we don't know. That's why it's so important to get the right people around you who are honest with you. That's why people hire coaches. That's why people bring in consultants. That's why people find mentors. It's because what you don't know, you don't know. And you may unintentionally be causing death. And this happens a lot. So many people are well-intentioned, but they're not bringing good into the world completely accidentally. Just like as an example, we were talking about the boss who doesn't want to micromanage. That seems like a great thing. Most people talk negatively about micromanaging, but then they take a completely hands-off approach. And in doing that, the person who wants to get recognition and guidance a lot in short periods of time, they're not getting it. And now they feel like you don't appreciate them. That's not true. You do appreciate them. You appreciate them so much that you're not trying to micromanage them, right? That's how it is. And you feel like you're doing a great thing. And they feel like you don't care about them at all. So unintentionally, you're causing death. Completely unintentionally. So you need to figure out, where are you causing death? And sometimes the hard truth is it's your fault as a leader. A lot of times it's your fault as a leader. And that doesn't mean that it has to continue to be your fault. It doesn't mean that you're an awful human being. It just means that you need to make changes. And that's a good thing. Only good things happen when there are changes. And you have to make those changes in order to get to new life. And this is another thing you also have to be aware of within this. If you find life today, that doesn't mean that life will always be there in the exact same way. And death, it's tricky. It'll find new ways to come into your business and organization. It'll find new ways to come onto your team. And if you're not being vigilant as the leader, you're going to miss those times. You're going to miss the death that's entering into your organization. And each time you miss it and you allow it to stay there, it's going to seep further and further and further. It's like the thorn in the foot, right? The thorn in the foot, it feels uncomfortable, but it's just uncomfy. So I'm going to continue to walk. And what happens when you leave that thorn in the foot? It starts to get worse. It starts to get gross. And it gets so bad that eventually you have to amputate the foot completely. But you don't want to have to amputate your team. But sometimes that's what happens in a business and organization. They've let death stay in there so long, the only solution they have left is to cut X amount of their workforce. Let them go. You see it time and time again in business. It's happened a lot over the past decade, where thousands of people have been let go. Why? Because there was death in the organization and no one did anything about it. And so as a leader, you always have to be asking, where is the death happening right now? Where are people feeling these things? Because they are feeling these things. If we're looking at the statistics, 50% of the people in your business are directly experiencing those at the second phase of death. And the other 50% of people, if they're not experiencing the second phase of death, they have someone in their life very close to them who is experiencing the second phase of death. So statistically speaking, everyone in your business is being impacted by death in some format. And you have to discover where those things are. And on top of this, you can take it a step further. Because one person looking for the death and filling it instead with life is great. But what happens when you have two people doing that? What happens when you have three people doing that? What happens when you have five people doing that? What happens when you have a whole team dedicated to only doing that, that's where things can completely change. When you have people, not just you by yourself, but you teach other people in your business and organization to look for life. When you teach people how to get rid of death and replace it with life, and you teach them how to teach it to other people, not only do you have people who are completely dedicated to you because you're helping them find life when no one else in the world is, but you now have a team of people who are all doing that. There's power in having that community that are all looking for ways to insert more life, that are always being vigilant. And the other thing is, a person by themselves, you're going to miss things. I miss lots of things in my life. I can be completely oblivious to things at some points. It happens. And you're going to be completely oblivious to things too. And a lot of times, those things that you're completely oblivious to cause death. And if you have a team of people who are dedicating to helping everyone find life, they'll catch every single point that you were blind to. And they'll catch when you're accidentally causing death. And that empowers you, that empowers them, that empowers everyone in your team, that empowers everyone in your business and organization. And that has so much power right there. And so life, you want to be looking for it for yourself, definitely. But if you want to be a legendary leader, you have to look for life in the entire business and organization. You have to look for it in the entire team. You have to change it from me to we. And you have to bring that life with you in every aspect. And you have to bring more people onto the team with you who are looking for life. That is the power that you have as a leader. That is how you create a dream team. That is how you create an organization that is able to continuously generate reproducible, monumental results. It starts with you as the leader, understanding what is life for me? What is life for my business or organization? What is life for each person on my team? And how do I get them to see life more often? And how do I get them to look for life more often? Not just for themselves, but for the team and the business and organization as well. That is life and death. And you get to choose. You, as the leader, get to choose. Do we want life or do we want death? Do I want life or death in my life? Do I want life or death in my business and organization? Do I want life or death on my team? And if you're listening right now, I know you want life. If you're listening right now, I know that you want your team to have life because you want them to be a dream team. I know right now you want your business and organization to have life. And you can, if you want it. And that's the big question. Do you want it? I believe you do. And the next question becomes, how are you going to do it? That is the challenge that I leave with you. How are you going to see death? And how are you going to replace it with life? How does that look in your business? How does that look on your team and organization? How does that look in your life? You tell me. And with that, that is the end of the final session of today's summit. I hope that you who are here listening were impacted by that. I hope that you go out into the world and look for more life, in your team, in your business and organization. Because the world needs that right now. The world is dying from death, literally dying from death. And you have the opportunity, starting right now, to create more life. And I hope you do. I want you to. Because the more people we can get to create life in the world, the more people we can get to do that, the more we can have a world where life is the norm. If it starts with me and you listening right now, and you guys help the 5 closest people to you find more life, and they help the 5 closest people to them find more life, or maybe the 4 closest people, because you just happen to be one of the closest people to them, right? But you continue this train. They help the 4 closest people to them. They help the 4 closest people to them. In the next decade, we have the potential to create a world where life is the norm, not death. And right now, death is the norm. And it's sad to see. It's sad to hear the statistics behind it. It's sad to see so many people in pain, in despair, in misery. I don't want that. And I don't think you guys want that either. Because you're here because you want to be legendary. And you can be legendary. Let's go out into the world and create more life for everyone, for ourselves, for those closest to us, for those that are in our teams and those in our businesses and organizations. We can do that. And we can make life the norm in the next decade.